Hello there and welcome to this week's Granny's Garden. Now this week I'm going to be ticking off yet another item on my to-do list. It's a very important item for me and it's done every year in the fall winter, and it is giving a deep clean and disinfection of my bird feeders and my bird nesting boxes. Now one of the best ways to get rid of those slugs, snails, bugs and general wee beasties are natural predators, and for me the top of the list on natural predators are birds. So invite them into your garden. Put up feeders for them. Give them nice bird baths where they have fresh water for both for drinking and for bathing in. And put up nesting boxes. But once you have invited them into your garden, it's up to us as gardeners to keep them safe and healthy. The location of the bird feeders is important. It has to be high enough off the ground so a cat jumping from the ground can't reach it. It has to be far enough away from the trunk so that any cat climbing up can't swipe at it with its paws. It needs a good perching area that's safe and secure for them. It also needs a good width of roof. It's very, very important to keep those bird seeds nice and dry so they don't form any mould. Also important is to give those birds a good flight path. Now the flight path in and out is very unobstructed, which is great for them. But over this, I've got quite a heavy canopy in spring and in summer. So when this intense heat comes in the summer, it's actually quite cool in this particular area. Now the first thing I want to look at is the actual S-shaped hook I use to hang it up. This is a nice sturdy piece of work. Also, as you can see, it's not symmetrical. It's got one narrow side here and one wide side there. The little narrow side would either hook into your bird feeder or indeed a hanging basket. But what's great about it is this wide side is wide enough to be able to hang over most branches on the trees. So absolutely great thing, far better than the symmetrical ones. The choice of feeder is important because there are feeders that are more fanciful or pretty than functional. It is very, very important, as I said before, to keep the seed dry. And this one, it's impossible to remove the roof. It's actually sealed, so there's no way the rain can get down underneath and into that tube. So the seed is always going to be dry. And the way you put seed in is just you slide this little compartment here to one side and the seed goes in there. And then, of course, this is full, it drops down into the container below, and as the birds pick and empty this tray, by gravity, more fills it. And if you have a look inside, the birds actually don't leave that very much at all. Usually I will always sort of shake this out, like that, before putting new seed in. And as you can see, there's not a hell of a lot left. There's maybe one or two little seeds and the rest of it is just chaff. Now this actually comes with a warning on it. I don't know if you can see it here. It says, during nesting season, from April to September, do not use whole peanuts as they present a choking hazard to young birds. So keep that in mind. If they put a warning on it, it's for something. Now I don't use peanuts at all. This is the brand I use and the birds love it. As you can see, they eat it right down to the chaff. And I just flip it over here. You can see the ingredients there. It's wheat, black sunflower, red darry, cut maize, white millet and kibbled split peas. And they absolutely love it. And now all I've got to do is give it its annual deep clean. So I just got some nice hot soapy water here. I'm going to open the container so it can flood in and just give it a nice wash. Now having this little compartment here is very handy because I can get my fingers right in and squish that brush around. And of course you can use a bottle brush if you want, whatever you feel handiest. But this comes out nice and clean. So you can see the this is beautiful and clean now on the inside. The water's just come down like as if it was the seeds. I just want to give a little extra wipe now to the actual seed tray itself. The next thing I'm going to do is just give these a good hose down with a bit of pressure, just to get any detergent out. And I'm just going to leave these dry a little bit and then I'm going to be disinfecting them. So the phases we've gone through, we've taken out any of the chaff, we've cleaned it with soapy water, we've hosed out the detergent. You'd normally let it dry and then we go on to disinfecting, but for the video's sake we're going to speed this up and imagine that it's dry. So I would now be using the bleach mix I always use for disinfecting, say, my pruning shears or my loppers, etc. And it's 10%, so it's 9-to-1 of water and bleach. So you'd give this, I've got obviously my plastic cloth on the table, I don't want bleach getting on my table, but you would give this a thorough soaking in this bleach mix. Don't be skimpy on this. Let it go into all the compartments, even on the inside. Make sure underneath there is done as well. And then I would leave this open. And this will be air dried. You will not remove the disinfectant here by hose or by water or any other means. You just leave this air dry. And as soon as it's air dried, obviously the smell of bleach disappears and you're ready to go. Now these feeders are now both nice and clean and nice and dry. So all we've got left now is to fill it up. Ready to go. Now the next thing we're going to be having a look at is nesting boxes. Now I have two different types of nesting box here. The first type is purely for show. They're ornamental, they're pretty, and I've got one on the silver birch tree in the south part of the property, and I've got another hanging from the olive tree. But as I said, they're not functional, they are purely for dress, for show. They're pretty. And the second type I have are the RSPB approved. Now that's the Royal Society for Protection of Birds. When you're making a nesting box or you're buying a nesting box, it's not just a box with a hole in it. You've got to take certain things into consideration if you want them to be successful and if you want to keep your birds safe. The first and most important is the diameter of the hole. Decide what type of bird you want nesting there. If you want a tit or a small bird nesting there, then the diameter of the hole must not exceed 25 millimeters. If, like myself, you want a larger bird like a sparrow, then you need 32 millimeters. Another important aspect is the location of the hole. It should be no less than 125 millimeters from the base of the box. It might seem quite high up, but there's a reason for it. If it is any lower, young birds squirming around inside can fall out of the nest. And if it's any lower, a cat can poke its paw in and scoop them out. Here it is impossible for him to put his arm in and get right down to the end where the baby birds are. The inside of this front panel is going to be rough, and that way it makes it easier for the young birds. When the time comes, they can clamber up quite easily to reach the hole to be able to leave the nest. Another thing you will note is there's no perch here. Nesting birds do not need a perch. They fly straight in, they rest here and they pop down into the hole and pop out of it again. All you're inviting with a perch is for an intruder to come along and try and get hold of the birds as they emerge. No perch, no intruders. One last thing about the actual box itself. If I turn it over, you can see that it has two drainage holes. It's not likely that water can get in because you can see the roof is slanted down so the water lands, and it's also got a little lip on it so the water comes here and then it falls off that way. However, if there's a very, very strong wind and some water should get inside the hole, well, it's got to be able to drain out without drowning the poor little birds on the inside, or at least getting them wet. The location is important, and height-wise, both for tits and for sparrows, is somewhere between 2 metres and 4 metres off the ground on the main trunk. It's important also the way it faces, because they can get overheated in summer. So it's important to put the boxes either facing north or facing east, but never facing west or south. Now, the ideal time to have this already on the tree trunk is right now in autumn and winter, because not all, but a lot of birds are already eyeing out nesting sites or potential nesting sites for next year. Now, unfortunately, this year, this arrived at the end of April, which was far, far too late for the present nesting season. And I think only one of the 3 boxes I have was actually used this year. That's why I want to get it nice and clean, spick and span, and ready to hit the ground running at the beginning of the next nesting season. Ho ho! Okay, now that is a surprise. We have 2 things here. First of all, we have a wasp's nest in the top half, and we have a nest in the bottom half. My goodness, I didn't realize. Okay, so I'm just going to get this nesting material out. Obviously, I'm going to get this. Look at that. Whatever they are, they've hatched out. I presume as they hatched out, they were eaten by the birds. And let's have a look in here. Ah, look at that. They seem to be using lots of little twigs, lots of moss actually. Lots of moss there. And some feathers. Okay. So certainly pleased about that. So as with the bird feeders, the first thing I'm going to do is put it in a nice basin of warm, soapy water. And I'm going to give it a good scrub with a little Spontex. After that, important for nesting boxes is they can harbour fleas and parasites. Now I don't see any fleas here. Parasites you probably have to get up close and even possibly under a microscope. I can't use flea powder and I can't use insecticide because it is a nesting box. But what I do is use a good old-fashioned way. A nice big kettle of boiling water, and you can guarantee you that it's going to kill off every last parasite. Now what I'm going to do now is leave this to dry out completely, but thoroughly, completely. And then what I'm going to do is mount the lower part of the panel, then I'm going to put some sterile wood shavings in, and then locate the top part of the box. Now the reason I'm going to leave the wood shavings in all through the winter is that little mammals might decide to hibernate in there, or insects, or even with the bad weather we get here in the mountains and the storms, some little birds might decide to roost in there. The nesting box is now perfectly dry and perfectly clean, all ready for mounting. What I'm going to do now is get this wood litter or wood shavings, which is basically what you would use if you had a rabbit or a guinea pig or a hamster. And I'm just going to lay some here in the bottom and then start remounting the panels. Now this obviously I'd normally do after I had mounted the panel, but just to show you just a little bit there at the end, and that's sufficient. Perfect. Well, my 3 nesting boxes are all spick and span and ready for the next nesting season. The 2 on each side with the holes are for my sparrows, and I'm going to be relocating those now on the main tree trunks. The one in the middle with the open front is for robins and blackbirds, and I'm going to be locating those in a more secluded area, probably among the ivy hedge I've got. But for the moment, the job is done for this autumn. It's ticked off my to-do list, and I hope now between all us gardeners we can keep our birds safe, happy and cosy through the winter and the next nesting season. And I look forward to seeing you next Friday here in Granny's Garden. Bye bye now.